Welcome to a deep dive into the world of CrossFit coaching. CrossFit's known for intense workouts, but have you ever wondered, what goes into creating a great CrossFit coach?
Yeah.
Not just someone who can yell, 3, 2, 1, GO, but someone who can really help athletes reach their full potential safely and effectively.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a question that goes beyond just knowing the exercises.
Right.
It's about understanding the principles behind effective training,
Uh-huh.
building a rapport with athletes,
Yeah.
and creating a positive and supportive environment.
That's what we're going to explore today. We're taking a peek behind the curtain of the CrossFit Level 2 trainer course.
Okay.
We're using their official Level 2 training guide and workbook.
Mm-hmm.
Copyright CrossFit Inc.
All right.
So think of it as a backstage pass to see how this popular fitness methodology approaches coaching development.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And whether you're a CrossFit enthusiast, a budding coach, or even if you just want to learn more about effective training in general,
Uh-huh.
I think you'll find this deep dive fascinating.
I think so too. All right, let's unpack this. The guide breaks down coaching expertise into 6 key areas. They call these the 6 pillars. These are like a CrossFit coach's secret weapons. Teaching, seeing, correcting, group management, presence and attitude, and demonstration.
You know what's fascinating to me is that these pillars apply even if you're not a CrossFit coach.
Interesting.
Imagine you're teaching someone to play the ukulele or even coaching a team at work. These skills are so versatile.
That's a great point. So let's dive into the first pillar, teaching.
Mm-hmm.
The guide emphasizes that it's not enough for a coach to just know the right way to do something. They need to be able to explain it, break it down, and adapt their teaching style to different individuals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about it. You might be able to deadlift 500 pounds, but can you explain the mechanics to someone who's never even touched a barbell? A great coach needs to be able to bridge that gap, to take those complex movements and make them understandable and accessible to anyone.
Yeah, it's like they need to be fluent in movement language,
Right.
being able to speak it themselves and translate it for others.
Exactly. And that's where drawing on knowledge from related fields like anatomy or nutrition can really come in handy.
Yeah.
A good coach understands how the body works, how it responds to different stimuli,
Right.
and how to tailor their instruction to meet those individual needs.
Okay, so a coach needs to be a master teacher, but they also need to have incredible observational skills. That's where the second pillar comes in. Seeing, and this is so much more than just passively watching your athletes.
It really is.
Yeah.
A great coach develops this almost like X-ray vision for movement.
Uh-huh.
They can see those tiny hitches in form, those subtle imbalances.
Right.
That could either be holding someone back or even putting them at risk for injury. It's about actively analyzing every rep, both statically and in motion.
So much for just standing around with a clipboard, huh?
Yeah, right.
They need to be hyper-focused.
Totally.
But honestly, I'm curious, how do you actually develop that kind of seeing ability? Is it something you're born with? Or can you train your eye to become that sharp?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's definitely a skill that can be developed over time
Uh-huh.
with practice and the right guidance.
Okay.
The Level 2 training guide actually provides specific drills and exercises designed to hone those observational skills.
Wow.
Participants analyze each other's movements,
Right.
identify faults,
Yeah.
and practice providing effective cues.
That makes sense. It's like anything else, right?
Yeah.
The more you practice, the better you get.
Exactly.
But I imagine it takes a certain level of attention to detail and a genuine passion for movement to really excel at this.
You're absolutely right. It's about being deeply engaged in the process.
Constantly observing, analyzing, and refining your understanding of how the body moves.
Wow, that's fascinating. So we've talked about how a great CrossFit coach needs to be a master teacher and a keen observer of movement. But what happens when they spot those little flaws, those tiny hitches in form? That's where the third pillar comes in, correcting.
It's true.
Yeah.
And this is where the art of coaching really shines.
Yeah.
It's not just about pointing out what's wrong.
Right.
It's about knowing how to communicate effectively,
Uh-huh.
how to provide feedback that is both clear and encouraging.
So it's like a delicate balance, right?
Yeah.
You want to help people improve, but you don't want to make them feel discouraged or overwhelmed.
Exactly. And that's why the guide stresses the importance of having a variety of tools in your coaching toolkit.
Uh-huh.
A great CrossFit coach can use verbal cues, visual demonstrations, and even tactile adjustments to guide their athletes towards better movement. Can you give me some specific examples of those different types of cues? Like what would be a verbal cue versus a visual cue versus a tactile cue?
Sure. Let's say you're coaching someone on the squat, right?
Okay.
A verbal cue might be drive your knees out or keep your chest up.
Gotcha.
A visual cue might involve showing them a video of proper squat form.
Okay.
Or even demonstrating the movement yourself.
Right.
And a tactile cue might involve gently placing your hand on their back to help them maintain an upright torso.
Interesting. So it's almost like you're using all of your senses to communicate with the athlete and help them kind of feel the movement in their own body.
That's a great way to put it. It's about finding the cues that resonate most effectively with each individual and helping them develop a deeper awareness of their own movement patterns.
I can see how that would take a lot of practice and sensitivity on the part of the coach.
Yeah.
It's not just about barking out orders.
Right.
It's about building a connection and working together to refine the movement.
Absolutely. And speaking of connection, let's move on to the fourth pillar, group management.
Okay.
This one might not seem as glamorous as the others.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely essential for creating a smooth and effective training environment.
I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of group management. They might think, it's just about making sure everyone has equipment and keeping the gym tidy. But it's so much more than that, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Think of a great CrossFit coach as a conductor leading an orchestra. They need to keep everyone on the same page, create a sense of flow and energy, and make sure each individual is getting the attention and support they need.
So time management, spatial awareness, communication, all these things come into play, right?
Exactly. A good coach knows how to maximize the use of space and time, how to create a workout flow that is both efficient and engaging,
right,
and how to provide individual feedback while still maintaining a cohesive group dynamic. It's a delicate balancing act for sure.
And I imagine it becomes even more challenging when you have a class with athletes of varying abilities all working out at the same time. How do you, as a coach, make sure everyone is getting the appropriate level of challenge and attention?
That's a great question. And it leads us nicely into another key topic covered in the guide, scaling and warm-ups. The guide emphasizes that scaling is about preserving the intended stimulus of the workout while adjusting the variables, the weight, reps, or even the movements themselves, to meet the individual needs of each athlete.
I like that. Preserving the intended stimulus. So it's not about making the workout easier or harder.
Right.
But rather finding the right variation that allows each person to work at their appropriate level of intensity and challenge.
Exactly. And the guide provides a ton of specific strategies for scaling workouts to accommodate different ability levels. It breaks it down into 4 main categories: beginners, intermediate athletes, advanced athletes, and injured athletes.
That's helpful. So for someone who's brand new to CrossFit, the focus would be on building a solid foundation, mastering the basic movements before adding weight or complexity.
Precisely. The guide stresses that for beginners, the priority is on developing proper movement mechanics and building consistency.
Okay.
It's not about throwing them into the deep end with heavy weights or complex movements right away.
Makes sense. You want to build confidence and competence before pushing the limits. But as athletes progress, how does the approach to scaling change?
Well, for intermediate athletes, the guide suggests focusing on scaling repetitions or load. For example, if a workout calls for 21-15-9 reps, an intermediate athlete might scale it to 15-12-9 or even 12-9-6, depending on their current capacity.
And for those advanced athletes who are already crushing it, how do you scale things up to keep them challenged?
For advanced athletes, scaling might involve increasing the weight, using more challenging variations of the movements, or even adding additional work to the workout. The goal is to continually push their limits and help them reach new levels of performance.
It's amazing how scaling allows people of such different abilities to work out side by side, all doing a version of the same workout that's appropriate for their level. It really speaks to the inclusivity of CrossFit, doesn't it?
It does. And the guide even addresses scaling for injured athletes, which is a whole other layer of complexity. The number one priority is always to train pain-free.
Right.
So the scaling needs to be carefully adjusted to work around limitations and avoid aggravating any existing injuries.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about finding creative ways to modify the movements while still allowing injured athletes to stay active and maintain their fitness.
Right. And it often requires close communication between the athlete and the coach to determine the best approach. Now, speaking of preparation, let's talk about warm-ups. The guide emphasizes that warm-ups aren't just about getting your heart rate up.
Right.
They're a crucial part of preparing the body for the specific demands of the workout.
I've heard a lot of CrossFit coaches say that a good warm-up is like a mini workout in itself.
That's a great way to think about it. The guide provides examples of specific warm-up routines that include elements of movement prep, dynamic stretching, and even skill work that's relevant to the workout.
So instead of just doing some, generic stretches and jumping jacks, a CrossFit warm-up might involve practicing air squats, shoulder presses, or even handstand walks, depending on what the workout involves.
Exactly. And the warm-up can also be a great opportunity to address any weaknesses or imbalances. For example, if an athlete struggles with pistols, the warm-up might include some drills to improve ankle mobility or single leg strength.
It's like a personalized training session within a training session. And it makes sense to me you want to prime the body and the mind for the movements that are coming up, right?
Absolutely. The goal is to make the transition into the workout as seamless as possible.
Yeah.
And to set the athletes up for success.
Okay, so we've covered scaling and warm-ups, which are both essential parts of creating a safe and effective training environment. But what about the actual structure of a typical CrossFit class itself? How does the guide suggest putting all these pieces together?
Well, the guide breaks down the typical CrossFit class into a 3-part lesson plan: the warm-up, the workout, and the cool-down. Seems pretty straightforward. But as you might expect, there's more to it than meets the eye.
I'm all ears. Let's start with the warm-up. What are some of the key coaching considerations for this part of the class?
The guide emphasizes that the warm-up is a valuable opportunity to assess athletes' abilities, identify any limitations or areas that need attention, and tailor the coaching accordingly.
Right.
It's also a chance to build rapport with the group, create a positive and encouraging atmosphere, and set the tone for a successful training session.
I like that. It's almost like the coach is like a detective during the warm-up, gathering clues about their athletes' strengths and weaknesses, their energy levels, their mindset.
Exactly. And that information can then inform their coaching decisions throughout the rest of the class.
Okay, so the stage is set. The athletes are warmed up and ready to go. What are some key coaching points for the workout portion of the class?
Well, the guide talks a lot about threshold training, which is about pushing athletes to their limits while maintaining safe and effective movement. It's about finding that sweet spot between intensity and technique.
So it's about helping athletes push hard without sacrificing form or safety.
Exactly. A good coach knows how to create that balance, how to motivate their athletes to work hard, while also keeping a watchful eye on their movement quality.
It sounds like a delicate dance. Pushing for intensity while also prioritizing safety and proper form.
It is, and it requires constant communication, feedback, and adjustments throughout the workout. The guide also emphasizes the importance of the pre-workout brief, where the coach thoroughly explains the workout, demonstrates the movements, reviews any range of motion standards, and discusses scaling options with the group.
That makes sense. It creates clarity, sets expectations, and allows athletes to make informed decisions about how they're going to approach the workout.
Precisely. And once the workout is underway, the coach's role shifts to that of a, watchful guide, providing encouragement, cues, and adjustments as needed. They're like a conductor, leading the orchestra through the symphony of movement, ensuring that everyone is playing their part and staying in sync.
I love that analogy. And finally, we have the cool down, which is often neglected, but incredibly important, as the guide emphasizes. It's not just about catching your breath.
Right.
It's about restoring the body, promoting recovery, and even continuing the learning process.
It's true. The cool down can be a valuable time for education.
Yeah.
Coaches might use this time to talk about nutrition, proper recovery strategies, or even the science behind the movements they just performed. It's a chance to deepen athletes' understanding of fitness and empower them to take ownership of their health.
I love that idea, turning the cool down into like a post-workout brain game session.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the physical recovery either. You mentioned earlier that the cool down can also be a time for community building, right?
Absolutely. It's a chance for athletes to connect, share their experiences, encourage each other, and solidify those bonds that make CrossFit so special.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive into the CrossFit Level 2 training guide. We've explored the 6 pillars of effective training, delved into the nuances of scaling and warm-ups, and even dissected the structure of a typical CrossFit class.
We've seen how much goes into becoming a great CrossFit coach. It's about so much more than just knowing the exercises.
Yeah.
It's about developing a wide range of skills, understanding the principles behind effective training,
Right.
and cultivating a passion for helping others succeed.
It's about creating a positive, supportive, and challenging environment where athletes can thrive, push their limits, and reach their full potential. But you know what? I think a lot of these insights apply even if you're not a CrossFit coach or even a CrossFit athlete.
That's what's so fascinating about this deep dive. Whether you're coaching a team at work, teaching your kids how to ride a bike, or even just training on your own, these principles can be incredibly valuable. The emphasis on proper mechanics, the importance of scaling to your current ability, the power of clear communication and feedback, and the idea that learning is a continuous process. These are all like universal truths that can help us achieve our goals no matter what those goals may be.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? How can you apply these insights to your own training or coaching, no matter your level of experience? Maybe you'll be inspired to pay closer attention to your movement mechanics, explore different scaling options, or even seek out a coach or mentor who can help you refine your skills.
Or maybe you'll simply approach your workouts with a renewed sense of purpose and attention to detail. Whatever your takeaway, we encourage you to keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep pushing your boundaries, both physically and mentally.
Well said. And remember, the journey is just as important as the destination. So embrace the process, stay curious, and keep striving for excellence in all that you do. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a fascinating topic, so stay tuned. We're back for part 2 of our deep dive into the CrossFit Level 2 trainer course.
And we're picking up right where we left off, exploring those 6 pillars of effective coaching.
And how they actually play out in a real CrossFit setting.
Yeah.
But there's one pillar we haven't touched on yet, and it's one that I think is especially intriguing.
Oh, which one is that?
Presence and attitude.
Ah, yes. Presence and attitude.
It's interesting because this pillar might seem a bit touchy-feely compared to some of the others.
Yeah, right. Seeing or correcting. But the guide makes it clear that presence and attitude are absolutely essential for creating a positive and transformative training experience.
They really are. I mean, think about it. We've all had that coach, right?
Yeah.
Who just has that it factor.
Yeah.
They walk into the room and their energy is contagious.
Totally.
They make you feel motivated and supported.
Yeah.
And they just genuinely believe in your ability to succeed.
That's exactly what this pillar is all about. It's about creating that kind of environment where athletes feel safe, encouraged, and empowered to push their limits.
Absolutely. It's about more than just, being energetic and enthusiastic.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating that deeper connection with your athletes.
Right.
Understanding their individual goals,
Yeah.
their strengths, their weaknesses,
Right.
and just meeting them where they are.
So how does the guide suggest cultivating this kind of presence and attitude? Are there specific techniques or strategies that coaches can use? Well, the guide emphasizes that it starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Coaches need to be mindful of their own energy, their body language, their tone of voice,
Right.
and just how those things impact the people around them.
That makes sense. If you're, feeling stressed or distracted, your athletes are going to pick up on that.
Yeah.
And it's going to affect their training experience.
Exactly. So coaches need to cultivate practices that help them stay grounded, focused, and positive,
Okay.
even when things get challenging.
Things like mindfulness, meditation, or even just taking a few deep breaths before starting class.
Those are all great examples. The guide also talks about the importance of active listening,
Oh, interesting.
really tuning in to what your athletes are saying, both verbally and non-verbally, and responding with empathy and understanding.
So it's about creating a two-way dialogue,
Okay.
not just lecturing at your athletes,
Right.
but engaging with them on a deeper level.
Exactly. And it's about being genuine and authentic in your interactions. People can spot a fake from a mile away, right?
Totally.
So it's important for coaches to be themselves and just let their passion for fitness and their care for their athletes shine through.
I love that. And, I think this idea of presence and attitude extends beyond just the gym or the training environment, it's something we can all strive for in our daily lives.
I completely.
Whether we're interacting with our coworkers, our families, or even just strangers on the street.
Cultivating a positive and supportive presence can have like a ripple effect. It can make the world a better place.
Yeah.
One interaction at a time.
Okay, so we've explored all 6 pillars of effective coaching in depth, but before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on one last point that really stood out to me in the guide, and that's the emphasis on continuous learning and development.
Yeah, the guide makes it very clear that coaching is a journey, not a destination. It's about constantly seeking new knowledge, refining your skills, and staying curious about the, ever-evolving world of fitness.
It's about having a growth mindset, embracing challenges as opportunities for learning, and never becoming complacent.
Absolutely. And that's something we can all apply to our lives, regardless of our profession or our passion.
Right.
There's always more to learn, more to explore, more to discover. And the more we embrace that journey, the more fulfilling our lives will be.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the CrossFit Level 2 trainer course, we want to leave you with a few final thoughts to ponder. What resonated with you most from this episode? What insights or takeaways can you apply to your own training or coaching, or even just to your life in general?
Maybe you'll be inspired to take a CrossFit course yourself.
Yeah.
Or maybe you'll simply approach your workouts with a renewed sense of purpose and attention to detail.
Whatever your takeaway, we encourage you to keep diving deep.
Keep exploring.
Keep pushing your boundaries.
And thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep those midlines stable, those movements strong, and that mindset positive. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into the CrossFit Level 2 trainer course.
Yeah, we've spent the last 2 parts really unpacking those 6 pillars of effective coaching.
And how they actually play out in a real CrossFit setting.
Right.
But there's one pillar we haven't touched on yet, and it's one that I think is especially intriguing.
Oh, which one is that?
Presence and attitude.
Presence and attitude. Yeah, it's interesting because this pillar might seem a bit like touchy-feely compared to some of the others, like seeing or correcting. But the guide makes it clear that presence and attitude are absolutely essential for creating a positive and transformative training experience.
We've all had that coach who just has that it factor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They walk into the room and their energy is contagious.
Yeah, totally.
They make you feel motivated and supported, and they genuinely believe in your ability to succeed.
For sure.
That's what this pillar is all about.
It is.
It's about creating that kind of environment where athletes feel safe, encouraged, and empowered to push their limits.
Absolutely. It's about more than just, being energetic and enthusiastic. Right. It's about cultivating a deeper connection with your athletes, understanding their individual goals, their strengths, their weaknesses, and just meeting them where they are.
It's about building trust and rapport so that athletes feel comfortable asking questions, sharing their struggles, and celebrating their victories.
Yeah, totally.
So how does the guide suggest cultivating this kind of presence and attitude? Are there specific techniques or strategies that coaches can use?
Well, the guide emphasizes that it starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Coaches need to be mindful of their own energy, their body language, their tone of voice, and how those things impact the people around them.
That makes sense. If you're, feeling stressed or distracted, your athletes are going to pick up on that.
Of course.
And it's going to affect their training experience.
Exactly. So coaches need to cultivate practices that help them stay grounded, focused, and positive, even when things get challenging.
Things like mindfulness, meditation, or even just taking a few deep breaths before starting class.
Those were all great examples, yeah. The guide also talks about the importance of active listening, really tuning into what your athletes are saying, both verbally and non-verbally, and responding with empathy and understanding.
So it's about creating that two-way dialogue.
Yeah.
Not just lecturing at your athletes, but engaging with them on a deeper level.
Right, and it's about being genuine and authentic in your interactions. I mean, people can spot a fake a mile away,
Right. For sure.
So it's important for coaches to be themselves and just let their passion for fitness and their care for their athletes shine through.
I love that. And, I think this idea of presence and attitude extends beyond just the gym or the training environment. It's something we can all strive for in our daily lives.
For sure. I completely agree.
Whether we're interacting with our coworkers, our families, or even just strangers on the street.
Cultivating a positive and supportive presence can have a ripple effect. It can make the world a better place.
Yeah.
One interaction at a time.
Okay, so we've explored all 6 pillars of effective coaching in depth. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on one last point that really stood out to me in the guide.
Oh, right.
And that's the emphasis on continuous learning and development.
Yes. The guide makes it very clear that coaching is a journey, not a destination. It's about constantly seeking new knowledge, refining your skills, and staying curious about, the ever-evolving world of fitness.
It's about having a growth mindset,
Yeah.
embracing challenges as opportunities for learning, and never becoming complacent.
Absolutely. And that's something we can all apply to our lives, regardless of our profession or our passion.
Right.
There's always more to learn, more to explore, more to discover.
Exactly.
And the more we embrace that journey, the more fulfilling our lives will be.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the CrossFit Level 2 trainer course,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with a few final thoughts to ponder. What resonated with you the most from this episode?
Yeah. What are your biggest takeaways?
What insights or takeaways can you apply to your own training or coaching, or even just to your life in general? Maybe you'll be inspired to take a CrossFit course yourself, or maybe you'll simply approach your workouts with a renewed sense of purpose and attention to detail. Whatever your takeaway, we encourage you to keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep pushing your boundaries. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those midlines stable, those movements strong, and that mindset positive.